You want to use that, or you can use this? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran in Surah number 30 verse 21, another one of his signs is that he created spouses from amongst yourself for you to live with in tranquility. He ordained love and kindness between you. These truly are the signs for those who reflect. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Amma ba'd, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us and being with us this evening. And as we mentioned earlier, the topic of this evening is challenging marital traditions, prenups, postnups, and estate planning. And with us this evening, we would welcome our guest, Brother Naveen Hussain, who is the managing partner of Farooq and Hussain Law Office, and he has quite a number of years of experience in dealing with these issues. And the best thing is that, inshallah, today we're going to look at this subject both from the legal perspective as well as the Shari'i perspective as well. So there's a little bit for everyone in here. There's prenup for those who haven't gotten married yet. Let's see how we can get there. Then there's postnup. If you've already married, congratulations. Hope you stay married. But let's look at some of the things that can maybe, inshallah, help you. And then there's also estate planning as well. What that is, we're going to talk about that, inshallah. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. So let's dive right into it. And we're going to have a conversation type of a program. So it's not a lecture, it's not a presentation. So what's the first thing that you would say if someone asks, or want to know what are these? For some of us, the way we titled this, we said challenging marital traditions. For some of us, these concepts are alien. A lot of people, I know personally, some people who never heard of what's a prenup. So what's happening here?
Yeah, I think Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulih Nabiyil Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. I think first and foremost, we have to understand why this is even an issue, right? When we think about marriage, we think of marriage from the Islamic perspective. We have a nikah, you have ijab, you have qubul, and now you're married, mashallah, you had 2 witnesses, and that's really all that it takes. But when it comes to marriage in the West, in America, in a post-nation state orientation, meaning that we live in a government and we have bureaucracies and we have all these different things, marriage means something totally, totally different. Okay? And so the purpose of a prenuptial agreement, a postnuptial agreement, and other things that we're going to talk about is that these documents, and we'll go, into each one of these, inshallah, is that it gives us the ability to use Islamic law in this country. So a prenuptial agreement, for example, is an agreement in which you sign with your fiance before you get married. Okay? And the purpose of this agreement is to make sure that if this marriage ends, we've already decided on how all the assets are going to be divided. Okay? That's a prenuptial agreement. It's an agreement. A postnuptial agreement is an agreement that was entered into after the marriage began. Right? So the whole purpose of this is, the reason why this might seem foreign is that when in our countries back home, for example, in India, Pakistan, other Muslim countries, why would you have a prenup? Because Islam controls. The reality is in this country, Islam does not control. And if you wanted to control, the only way to make that happen is through a prenuptial agreement.
So is it safe for us to say that there are many benefits to having a prenup agreement, especially, well, I guess mainly for people who are not married yet? Is this something that they should be considering, or should they just, they love each other, they trust each other,
sure,
and they just want to, get married and get things going?
Subhanallah, subhanallah. So look, I'm a divorce attorney, okay, and sometimes we don't want to hear that word, but yes, unfortunately, I am a divorce attorney. I've been doing this for 10 plus years, okay, and I have 500 consultations every single year, and over 150 cases sign up each year. That's just me, one attorney. Okay, so that's giving you an idea of what the marriage situation is looking like here in Chicago. I really only practice DuPage County, Cook County, Kane and Will here and there, but primarily DuPage County and Cook County, and that's the volume that I'm getting. And these are mostly Muslim clients, subhanAllah. So the reason why you need to sign a prenup, okay? Once you get married in this country, the moment you get married, there's no differentiation between a husband and a wife. What does that mean? Meaning that once you are married under this law, you are treated as one individual. Whatever the husband earns, it belongs to the wife. Whatever the wife earns, it belongs to the husband. This is called marital property. Okay? In America, when you get married, this concept of marital property comes about. Anything that you acquire, property, retirement accounts, savings accounts, it doesn't matter whose name it's in. As soon as you get married, it belongs to both of you. Anything that you earn belongs to both of you. Okay, number one, there's no concept of marital property in Islam. Let's keep that in mind. Number two, when it comes to mahr, okay? When you sign a nikah nama at the masjid, when you get married, right? You say, my mahr is going to be $10,000, $50,000, $100,000.
Usually it's what the people want you to put on there.
Yeah, it's whatever you put on there. And people don't
Whether
even care.
you fulfill that or not, that's a different story.
May Allah protect us. It's become a show. But the reality is that a woman is relying on that. That is the basis of this nikah. And yet, if you were to divorce and you go to the court system here, that one piece of paper is not going to work, especially here in Illinois. That's reason number two. Reason number one is marital property. Reason number two is for the sisters, mahr. Number three is something called alimony. These are payments that are made after a divorce that can last 10, 20, 30 years. The prenup, the reason for the prenup is to address these three issues. We want to make sure that we define marital property the way we want it to be defined, according to Islam or whatever. And the beauty is that Islam allows us to agree to what we need to agree to. So you agree on what property looks like. You agree what the mahr is, and the sisters should make sure that this is going to be enforced. You want to make sure that there's no such thing as alimony, but if you agree that there's going to be a mu'akhar, or you're going to agree that there's going to be certain payments, you want to make sure that's agreed upon at the beginning, not enforced upon you at the time of a divorce. So romance is not going to get you very far. That lovey-dovey stage is not going to get you very far. The reality is marriage is a practical union. It's about living together. It's about finances. It's about all these other things, and those are the things we don't think about when we get married.
So two questions. So I mean that gives us a good understanding of what a prenup is. But let's say someone is getting married in, let's say, tomorrow. Can they do a prenup agreement today? What I mean,
Yeah.
do you have a recommended time frame, let's say maybe a number of weeks or a number of months before someone gets married to do a prenup contract? That's one. And the follow-up question is, in your experience, what are some of the things, some of the common things that you see that people include in prenup, especially from the sister side? What are some of the things that they would like to see as part of this contract?
Sure. So there's certain requirements to have a strong prenuptial agreement, okay? The reason why that one piece of paper doesn't count is because it doesn't qualify as a prenuptial agreement under Illinois law. In order for you to have a valid prenup in Illinois, or I should say a strong prenup in Illinois, both sides need to have a lawyer, both sides need to do a financial disclosure, and number three is that there should not be any duress, meaning no one felt forced into signing this agreement. Now translate that to the nikah. There was not attorneys on both sides. There was no financial disclosure. And everybody is there. Everybody flew in from across the world, across the country. They're all dressed up. Of course, they're going to have no choice but to sign that agreement. So it's very difficult to do it the day before. You should start thinking about a prenup as soon as you get married. Every couple in this day and age, everyone who's 35 or under who's getting married, marriage counseling and marriage education is a necessity. That's the first question, as can you get a prenup tomorrow? No, there are certain steps that you should take. For the sisters, when it comes to, and brothers especially, we have this, subhanAllah, we have this misconception that, our sisters are not working. That's not the reality in this. I think maybe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 7 are housewives. Most women are working nowadays. Most women make their own money. I've seen cases where the woman makes more money than the man, and the man asks for alimony from the wife. SubhanAllah. So for the sisters, what I would say is that you absolutely want to protect your own money. Your husband has no right to your money. You don't even, and Sheikh can obviously, expound on this much more than I can. The wife doesn't even have the necessity to pay for her own expenses. That's going to be the husband's job. So upon divorce, God forbid, husband should not be getting any of the wife's money. So you want to make sure in a prenup, all of your money is protected. And husband, the same thing, right? There's certain protections that should be there. Second, mahar, and as I mentioned before, idda, okay? Nafaqa, when there's she can talk about it, but once you have a divorce, there's actually a reconciliation period where you're supposed to continue to live together, see if you can reconcile. If that period doesn't work out, okay, then you're divorced. But in that period, the husband is supposed to continue to provide that support for you. And if you're pregnant, all the way until you have the child. So you want to make sure those provisions are going to be enforceable in your prenuptial agreement as well. And there's many other things that I can think about, but men or women, this is a very important document, I think.
You mentioned one word here, which is alimony.
Yes.
A lot of people are not familiar with that word.
Okay.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Alimony, okay, when a couple divorces, okay, depending on what the income of each party is. So let's say, for example, in this situation, you have wife making $50,000 and you have husband making $200,000. It doesn't matter who filed for divorce, but the court can say that in this scenario, husband has to pay X amount in alimony to the wife. And there's a formula. You literally take a formula. 33% of husbands minus 25% of wives. That's how you come up with what the maintenance payment is going to be. Okay? And then the length. If you've been married for 5 years, maintenance is 1 year. If you're married for 20 years, maintenance could be for the rest of your life. So these are payments that are made after the divorce, after you have nothing to do with each other. You've each moved on with your life. There could still be alimony payments that are due to the husband or the wife, depending on who makes more money.
Now, this concept of alimony is not from Islam, right? Because there's no reason why the husband or the wife should continue paying for their ex or
Ex-spouse.
for their ex-spouses, for year and years, even though they might be happily remarried and have moved on with
Yeah,
their life.
remarriage does cut it off, but yeah, you moved on. But remarriage for the one who's paying, even if they get remarried, that's not a basis to stop the payment. If the person receiving gets married, then that stops the payment.
This is, maybe you can talk about this a little bit. This is one of the things that basically destroys a lot of the fathers, especially who are in the situation, who've been married for many years, and they end up getting divorced, and the alimony is just it just kills them. Like, they have to take care of themselves. They have to, working maybe 2 jobs, 3 jobs, because this payment is there. And this is where this prenup comes into place, where it protects you from going down this path. Because once you're there, there's what can someone do to get out of that situation at that time?
Yeah, at that time, it's really based on your agreement. If the husband says, you know what, I don't want alimony is not allowed, I'm not going to take it, they have the choice not to take it at that time. The reality is that if there's a divorce, there's obviously some feelings and animosity behind that. And 95% of the cases that I have done, that's not even a consideration. They're going to pick this law over that law 90% of the time. So unless the other side agrees, there's really no way out. We live in this court system, right? We live in this society. And so this court is what has power over us. They have the power to take it from your bank accounts, to do, whatever they need to
garnish
do.
your wages.
Yes, absolutely.
And so on. So I guess the other side of this picture, maybe you talked about, a legal part of it. Let's look at it from a Shari'i perspective as well. I'm sure you probably get these, these type of questions too. What does Islam have to say about this prenup agreement? Is this something that's permissible in Sharia? Is this allowed in Sharia? I mean, I should be answering this, but I'll let you take this too.
Look, the beauty is that Islam is what we have, a contract-based marriage system. Okay, the West, America, uses unity theory. Once you are married, you are one person. That's why the wife would take the husband's name. You are one. You are the property of each other now. Islam, no. You are individuals. This is an agreement. This is a contract. Why is there ijab and qubul? Offer and acceptance. A prenup is a contract at the end of the day. I would argue, and Sheikh can correct me, that this is Islamic. You're supposed to have an agreement when you get married as to, yes, you have the default. Husband should provide financially, wife should provide X, Y, Z. That's the default. But we always have the freedom to contract. So I would argue that the prenup is actually an Islamic concept that we should be taking advantage of.
Are you seeing more and more, couple that are moving in this direction of doing a prenup?
Yes.
Is there still some resistance to it?
There's definitely resistance. There's absolutely resistance. So there's another program that I do called the Nikah Masterclass with Sheikh Joe Bradford and myself. We have a quarterly class that we do, and we have certain programs. So the whole purpose of that 8-hour class is to talk about marriage and divorce, both from the Islamic and the legal perspective. And so we're getting hundreds of students, alhamdulillah, who are learning about these laws, the difference between the Islamic law and the American law, and how we can solve that problem through these agreements. So amongst the younger generation, it's growing much more. The resistance we see is obviously from the parents, or what would they say, or how are they going to react? That's kind of the feedback that I'm getting.
Now, I want to stay on this. Let's say there's a couple, they're looking to get married, and this, one of them is familiar with the concept of the prenup, the other one is not. How should they be engaging in this conversation? Because it may seem, we have to be practical. It may seem as, maybe this, why do they want to do this prenup? They don't trust me? Or, why are we talking about finances? Because one of the things is financial disclosure, right? Like, I mean, that's my business. It shouldn't concern them. Why do we need to talk about this?
Yeah.
So, have you seen that type of resistance, and or have you seen relationships, I would say, maybe coming to an end even before they got started because the prenup was a sticking point?
There's definitely resistance, and I think education is really the only way to kind of combat that, right? Because obviously, when you think of a prenup, you think of like rich and famous celebrities, this type of thing, and you know, that's kind of the connotation that you have around prenuptial agreements. So I think that education is really going to be the biggest key. If one of the parties wants a prenup, the best thing to do would be, okay, why don't you take this class? Why don't you listen to this video, learn about it, and let's talk later. I think that's going to be the main way for this wave to actually start. When it comes to the prenuptial agreement and it ruining the marriage, quote unquote, right? That's a lot of objection. Oh, if we start talking about these things right now, then we're not going to get married. That's the point, right? That's the point. If that at this stage, when you're negotiating a prenuptial agreement, the practical day-to-day life of money and assets, that's what a marriage is about. If you can't agree at that stage, then maybe marriage is not right for you. This is a really good counseling type, premarital counseling exercise for a husband and wife to actually think about and go through. And I would argue that it could actually strengthen the marriage for that reason, that you talk about finances. But number two, you don't have the situation that if things are going bad, that the reason why they get married is for the financial, or the divorce is for a financial benefit, right? Because sometimes you have this situation where it might actually benefit somebody to get divorced financially. And the prenup will take away that financial incentive. And again, no one is talking about, there's another misconception. No one is talking about leaving somebody out in the dust. Not at all. I mean, even in the Quran, Allah talks about giving a gift at the time of divorce. So there's no concept of leaving somebody high and dry. Let's get that straight. A prenup is more about being fair and outlining this is the common prenup that I do, is anything that's in my name is mine, whatever is in your name is yours. If we ever buy anything with both of our names, it belongs to both of us. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. But that's not what the law says, right? The law says they don't care whose name is on it. They only care when did you buy it. So I think that, again, it can strengthen. I think it goes back to my point earlier about marital education and marital counseling, and the prenup being part of that to strengthen the marriage.
Now, if you notice, if the audience notices, and if we notice within ourselves too, one of the things that we keep coming back to are finances in a marriage. Would you say, or what would you say would be one of the main reasons why? Because you said you're a divorce attorney, right? I mean, you see these cases all the time. What percentage of your cases, divorce cases, the root cause would you say had to do with finance one way or the other?
Oh, I mean, it's huge, right? And there's so many ways that I've thought about this, and we can talk about divorce, what's causing divorce. The three primary reasons that I would give for why in the Muslim Desi community, especially, okay, and this also applies to the Arab community and the other communities as well, but especially Desis, in-laws, finances, and addictions.
Is that in that particular order?
I would argue in that particular order.
So in-laws first.
I would actually argue in-laws first. I would argue, especially in our community. In-laws, finances, addictions. I would say finances are absolutely one of the biggest reasons. And again, you have to think about, look at the society that we're in, right? What we care about is accumulation of wealth. Capitalism is all about you're successful only if you have money. Otherwise, you're not successful. And so this has been put into our brains since we were little kids. And now you have these expectations of what marriage is going to look like. You have social media, you have all these different things. And now if you cannot be provided what you thought you were going to be provided, I want divorce. One of them is a saver, one of them is a spender. They spend too much money, I want a divorce. Somebody's in debt, high credit card debt. You wouldn't imagine, you would think that, most Muslims, they use credit card just to get the points, right? And they make the excuse, oh, we pay it off every month. No. I'm telling you, the Muslim community has a lot of credit card debt, and it's all about keeping up with the Joneses. So this financial aspect is so sensitive and so dangerous, And so I would absolutely say finances is up there.
All right, so this gives a good picture, gives us a good picture of what can be or what should be a good starting point for for someone who's looking to get married, who's not married yet. But let's move on to the folks, because for some of us here that are here this evening and watching it online, they've learned a lot of new things. And some of them, they might have regrets now, like, oh, we should have done this a while ago, but we haven't now. Uh, I don't owe anything now. I mean, I don't own anything now. Nothing is mine. They thought the house was theirs. Now they think it's not theirs. They thought the car was there. Now they realize it's not theirs. So how can we address this situation now? Because one of the concepts we want to talk about now is post-nup, right?
Yeah.
So where does that come into play here?
So a postnup is pretty much the same thing as a prenup, except when are you signing it? Okay? A prenup you sign before you get married. A postnup you sign after you get married. Okay? And the thing is that the postnup actually links very well with estate planning. Okay? And we can talk about that when the time is right, inshallah. But a postnup is basically the exact same thing. Look, this is what we have right now. We have this house, we have this car, we have this retirement, we have all these different things. Let's think about this from two perspectives. What happens if we divorce? Okay, that's a postnuptial agreement. What happens if we pass away? That's estate planning, right? So prenup, people think about it, okay, that's a young person's problem. Postnup and estate planning, that's our problem, right? Older people problem. But the whole point is, again, to think about what would happen if we divorce. Because like Sheikh is mentioning, even if the house is your name, the retirement, it really doesn't belong. Under the law of the land, you each have ownership of that 100% each. So let's think about a joint house. If a husband and wife own a house together, if husband passes away, what happens? Can somebody answer? Wife gets it. All of it? All of it. Joint property. But what does that mean? That is basically means that each party owns 100% of that asset. Islamically, again, that's impossible. It's impossible for two people to own 100% of the same asset. Okay? So a postnuptial agreement can help you understand that this is 50-50 or 70-30 or 80-20 or 0-100, right? It's very important for us to start thinking about property as to who owns what and what percentage. The whole gray aspect of, oh, joint property, and if I pass away, she'll get it. If she passes away, he'll get it. When we get into estate planning, we're going to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a whole distribution model that we have to follow. And if we don't address this, it's impossible to follow the commandments in Surah An-Nisa. So I know that kind of foreshadows the second or the third discussion, but
no, it leads right into it, because how many cases do you know, again, going back to the divorce and that type of thing, or even family issues, end up having because of property dispute. Property dispute is a huge issue in our community that is often not talked about and overlooked.
Yes.
I mean, families have been broken apart. Relatives haven't spoken to each other for many years because someone, decided to not give others their right. Someone decided to take over their property, and they thought it was theirs. Someone, especially for the brothers and sisters in India and Pakistan, if you had relatives who used to work in the Gulf countries, you spent 10-15 years, and you're sending money back home, and you thought that house was being built for you, and finally you come back and you realize there's someone else living in that house. You have done nothing for 15-20 years. So I mean, can that be preemptively addressed in this post-nup agreement that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so the post-nup is going to be what happens upon divorce, right? So yes, in a divorce, there's two primary issues that you have to deal with. One is children and one is assets. You can imagine that if you have a post-nuptial agreement or a prenuptial agreement, all of that's already been decided. Instead of the average divorce costing $10,000 or more, it could be $3,000, right? The post-nup is going to do that much for you. When it comes to passing away, Same thing, right? The country has a certain way that your assets get distributed if you were to pass away. Okay? First, they look, is there a joint owner? For example, a husband and wife own a house, one passes away, it belongs to the other person. That's what the state says. That's what the title says. If there's no one on the title, then they look, is there a beneficiary, like your IRA, your 401k? Then it goes to that person. If you don't have a joint owner, you don't have a beneficiary, then the state decides how your assets are going to be distributed. Okay? The way that you can overcome that is by estate planning, by writing a will. Okay? A will is basically telling the state how you want your assets to be distributed. And we have the ability then to dictate how our assets are going to be distributed. And we can use the Islamic fractions and the steps that are outlined in the Quran to fulfill that. What's very interesting about my practice areas, let's think about salah, let's think about siyam, okay, let's think about zakah. These are the pillars of our deen. Yet how much of the Quran is dedicated to this? Okay, establish salah, give your zakah. That's all we really know. We don't know about 2.5%, 5 times a day, this many rak'ah. We have no idea. But when we look at inheritance and we look at divorce, subhanallah, ayat upon ayat on these topics. And it's so fascinating because these two topics, the stability of marriage and the stability of lineage, is very important in Islam. It is one of the maqsad, right? It's one of the objectives of Islam to make sure that our lineage, our property, our deen is firm and stable. Sorry, I don't know if that's a rant, but
yeah, no, it's we keep moving into into estate planning, which we're gonna get to.
Oh,
but,
sorry.
No, it's good. It's related to it.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to one thing that maybe we didn't touch upon a little
Sure.
bit. Maybe if you can talk about that, kids, because that is also one of the big things that happen in a marriage, especially in a divorce.
Yes.
And oftentimes, unfortunately, we see that kids are used as a tool by one side or the other because they want to get even or they want to punish the other side and so on and so forth. So does a prenup and or a postnup agreement help in this, or do the kids have anything to do with this, or is mainly property and finance?
Yes. So a prenup and a postnup, you cannot address children issues. You cannot talk about custody and you cannot talk about child support. That the state owns your kids. What do I mean? The state decides what is in the best interest of your children. Okay? So anytime there's a divorce and there's litigation and people are fighting over the kids, the court, some guy in a robe is going to decide what is in the interest of your children. Okay?
Even if both agree on...
No, if you agree, fine. If husband and wife can agree as to how things are going to work, yeah, the judge is fine. But if one of you is leaving it up to the judge will decide. Okay? So there is no legal way for us to determine what custody should be at the time of divorce. Obviously, Islamically, there might be some presumptions as to custody, but that doesn't apply in Western states. And actually, every state, subhanAllah, basically the whole world follows this whole colonized way of doing law and bureaucracy and marriage and all these things. Even the Muslim countries, are kind of going down this road as well when it comes to custody and finances and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no way to really address that up front.
Okay. We talked a little bit about divorce, and we talked about finance and state and that type of thing. But can we talk briefly about divorce itself? Because the Sharia concept of divorce and how it can be done is different than the Western concept. I'm sure you've seen many cases where a sister may have approached and is wondering. The husband stopped talking to her, and the next thing she knows, she got a notice saying, from his attorney that he's seeking for divorce. Or the other side as well, a sister might come and say that my husband divorced me. He said he divorced me. He said verbally, or he texted me, or whatever. Legally, are they divorced or not, or how does that work?
Okay, so again, just like almost in every other subject when it comes to marriage, divorce is also very different under Islamic law and Illinois law or American law. Okay? We have to realize that marriage is a very personal thing, Sharia wise. Okay? And so, in order to get divorced under Islamic law, there's, let's say, three ways. Okay? One is talaq, where the husband is pronouncing divorce. Okay? The second is going to be when a woman seeks a khula, where she wants to end the divorce or she wants to end the marriage. And the third might be a fasq, where a judge is going to be the one to dissolve the marriage based off grounds that the wife requests. Okay. Talaq, husband has to pronounce. Okay? Orally, witnesses, whatever the technical aspect of that is going to be. Khula is where the wife is requesting a divorce and the husband grants the divorce. So it's a bilateral dissolution of the marriage. The fasq, the judge, is the wife has to prove why there should be a divorce. And this is not very difficult. People think it's supposed to be very, very difficult to get a fasq. It's not that crazy of a thing that people try to put onto Islam. Okay, you have grounds of abandonment, you have grounds of not providing intimacy, you have grounds of not providing financially. There's many grounds. Those are the three ways, Islamically speaking. Okay. In the Western system, the way it works is somebody files a piece of paper. That piece of paper says, Judge, they're asking the judge, Judge, I want you to dissolve my marriage. So they're petition for divorce, petition for dissolution. Judge, dissolve my marriage. Whether the wife files it or the husband files it, they're asking the judge. Judge gets the divorce petition, and after issues of money, issues of children are decided, the judge will issue the divorce. Okay. Now there's a question here. If the wife initiated this piece of paper, asked the judge to dissolve it, does that count Islamically? Did the man issue? No. When the wife requested the khula, did the husband accept that? No. Was there grounds that were met? In the West, in Illinois, there's no grounds. It's called no fault divorce. Meaning you don't even have to tell the judge why you want a divorce. You just say, irreconcilable differences, judge, dissolve my marriage. No grounds are being proven. The judge is probably not Muslim. So there's a problem here that, mashallah, the scholars have to figure out. But I don't know if that counts as divorce.
It's a very difficult question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you an answer for that because it varies from case to case.
Sure.
There are many factors that need to be looked into, and it varies from individual to individual, to marriage, whether children are involved or not, and circumstances and all those things. So I don't think from a Shari'i perspective there can be a blanket answer saying that a divorce has occurred. It needs to be analyzed case by case, and then we can come to a ruling on that. But that's a very realistic situation that exists in our community that people may not be familiar with until, if unfortunately they're in that situation. Would you agree with that?
No, 100%. And that's the thing is that, when you think about the Islamic golden ages, the masses were educated on the law. Okay. It's only in the modern age where you have a separation between morality and law, where that was just the fabric of society. People were able to access the court systems themselves. You didn't have to go through a lawyer. You didn't have to pay somebody hundreds of dollars to go and represent you in the court. The people had the ability to go to the qadis of the community and present their case, right? But now you don't have that. And what happens is that at the time of divorce, people are shocked as to what happens with the property, what happens, how do you even divorce? We think about marriage and we're so shy to talk about divorce, but you always have to know where the exit ramp is. When you're on an airplane, they're going to say whatever they're going to say. We need to do that with our community, right? We need to do that with our community, and so that they're not shocked at that time, which can breed more animosity, right?
No, divorce is definitely, in our community looked in a negative light, especially in the Desi community, I would say, because there's a lot of pressure from the society, there's a lot of pressure from the parents, If you're getting abused, no problem, stay in that relationship. Your rights are not being met, no problem, stay in your relationship. Make him happy, especially for the sisters that go through this. Um, and the end goal always seems to be, or the question, the eternal question that never seems to be answered is, what will people say? What will people say if you get a divorce? But that's I would say that's an alien concept to Islam, because Sharia, as we've been talking about, this is an agreement, a contract that a person, brother and or a sister, enter into, and just as that contract you entered into, there's a way out for you as well. People misuse a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like one famous one that you probably know about, or that you probably heard. Or divorce is a disliked thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or one of the most disliked things. But they forget the part of the hadith where it says, if it's an unjust divorce, they forget that part and they say, oh, it's a disliked. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not want you to stay in an abusive relationship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not want you to stay in a relationship where your rights are not being fulfilled after you've done everything that you can to reconcile. And you talked about this briefly. The whole process of divorce as well. We didn't touch on this. The triple T situation. There's a whole mechanism built into Islam that is, there's a divorce, then there's a reconcile period. There's an opportunity for you to reconcile, and then if you reconcile, if it's not working, then you can separate again. Up to 3 times. That all mechanism is there, but unfortunately, it's either not known, or it's misunderstood and or abused.
Allah. And that's the beauty of Islam, right? The beauty of Islam is that it encourages marriage. Absolutely. It has societal guards to ensure that marriages flourish. Okay? So when it comes to divorce, the problem is not necessarily the divorce rate. Yes, it's a problem. But that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is how we divorce, right? How much animosity there is, how people are taking property from each other. That's what the problem with divorce is, not necessarily divorce in and of itself. It's how we're doing divorce.
All right, now let's move on into the... Can we take questions at the end? Or can you wait? Or let's wait till the end, and inshallah we'll open it for questions, because I'm sure you have questions. Let's move on into the third part of this. Now, we talked about prenup, we talked about postnup, and everyone is, they didn't do prenup. They might be planning on doing postnup now after this presentation. But let's move into state planning now. What is state planning, and how can that subject be addressed?
Estate planning is, how do we get our assets to the next generation as quickly and efficiently as possible? Trying to avoid taxes, making sure that people don't get involved, making sure that people don't fight. So what happens? And what we have to understand is that if we don't plan, the state already has a default plan, as I mentioned before. And the state will then distribute your assets the way that it wants to. Okay? However, Islamically, there is a prescribed way that inheritance is supposed to take place. Okay? The way that Islam distributes is based off of rights. Okay? We believe in the American system, we have the right to request our property however we want. People give all their money to their cat. Okay? Islam looks at it the other way. This is not your money. But when you pass away, it becomes the right of these individuals. And those individuals are going to be your parents. They're going to be your wives, your husbands, your children. Okay, depending on the situation, maybe your brothers and sisters. But the Western system, the American system, they don't have these fractions, and they don't care about your parents. Being honest. If you pass away in the West without a will, your parents do not get a share. Okay? So the only way that we can ensure that Surah An-Nisa is actually followed, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Quran, talks about fractions. Like, it's long. Talking about how the distribution is supposed to take place, right? 1/6 to this person, 1/8 to this person, 1/4 to this person. It's all in there. And so the only way to ensure that that happens is going to be through the estate planning process. Otherwise, there's no guarantee. Otherwise, whoever's name is on there, that's who's going to get it. And the problem is that the sin stays on us if we don't distribute properly. So I mean, that's why this is such an important topic.
No, it's important. It's an important subject, and even from a Sharia perspective, you mentioned in the Quran as well in Surah An-Nisa. Believe it or not, the concept of inheritance is, I would say, one of the most complicated subjects and one of the most detailed subjects that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala talks about in the Quran. We keep talking about Surah An-Nisa, the verses in Surah An-Nisa that talks about this. It goes into so much detail about who gets what, who gets how much, up down to a fraction. And for the Huffaz, if we have any Huffaz that are present here, you know that those are some of the most difficult verses to memorize as well. MashaAllah, Brother Naveen here is also Hafiz as well. You know that those are some of the most difficult verses, and every Ramadan, the Imam, when he's reciting those verses, he's sweating because he knows someone is back behind their back there waiting, because they know more than likely they might mess up here, and this is an opportunity for them to correct it. Am I wrong in that?
100%. It gives me PTSD actually.
There you go. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, the reason I'm mentioning this is because Allah Subhanahu wa Taala put immense, He stressed this so much that He went into great details in making sure that everyone's rights are fulfilled when it comes to inheritance. Now, one of the, maybe you can talk about this a little bit. One of the things that is pretty common in our culture, again, has nothing to do with the faith. In our culture, is the child is disobedient, he's not going to get any inheritance. Do you see a lot of that, or
people try?
What's the reality of that?
So yes, not only if you're disobedient to me, you're not going to get your share, but giving everything just to the eldest son. I've seen that a lot too. But that's not the way that like I said before, this money, when you pass away, is that child's right. Even if they're disobedient, even if you haven't talked to them for 10, 15 years, it doesn't matter. You don't have a right to dictate where that money goes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given them that right. The only way that a child would not inherit is if, Allah protect us, if they're not Muslim any longer. Besides that, it becomes their right. And again, all the money doesn't go to the eldest son. Each child has their share. The boys and the girls have their share, right? So as much as we might not want our children, or maybe they're already very successful, they already have millions of dollars, or one child needs more help than the other, Allah's already taken care of it. Don't worry. That's not your thing to worry about. Allah has given us the prescription, and those are the percentages that would need to go to these individuals.
Now, which leads me to two questions. Let's say that there are 4 children, and by some miracle, they all got along fine, and they say, we want the inheritance to be divided equally between us 4. And they come to you to do an agreement like that. Is that doable, or? So
the children?
Yeah, the children.
The parents have already passed away?
Yeah. The parents have given them their share according to Sharia.
In the lifetime?
In their lifetime.
Okay.
But now they don't want to go with that will. They say, we talked within ourselves. Some of us are getting more than the others, so we want to divide it equally.
Once the right has come to life, meaning that once your parents have passed away, you get your Sharia share, or you know what the right is going to be, then you can agree, then you could do whatever you want with that money. Okay? But you cannot, before your parents pass away, you can't disclaim the share and say that, no, I don't want it. You can only do that after the parents pass. Why? Because you don't know how much you're going to get. You don't know what your situation is going to be. You wait till you receive it, or you have the right is actually triggered. Then amongst your siblings, you can distribute however you want. But the initial distribution should be according to Islam, and no one should feel pressured to have to give up their share because the shares are off or whatever it might be, or because we believe equal or we believe whatever the state law is, that should rule. It's a right, and then once you give that right, then you can give from there.
This is a divine right. This is your right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given you this specific amount of share. There's wisdom behind it, whether we understand it or not. I mean, it's important for us to understand that and always give priority to what the Sharia tells us, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Now, when should someone start thinking about these types of things? Can state planning be part of, let's say, prenup, or does that come later?
No, these can all go hand in hand. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ said that you should not go more than 2 nights without a will if you have something to bequest. So you should have a will under your pillow. Subhanallah, subhanallah. This is part of our deen. Prenups and wills, this is part of our deen. Okay? And so when it comes to the will, we can, as soon as you have something, as soon as you get your first job, whether you're married or not, you should think about a will. Okay? Because this will remind us of passing away. This is an ibadah. So much so that the Prophet ﷺ said that the laws of inheritance is half of knowledge. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So much importance on this. So yes, you can start right away. In a prenup, you are able to dictate between husband and wife that we are going to write Islamic wills. Okay? That each of us will create a will, and we will make sure, you don't say it like that in the prenup, you don't say we're going to make an Islamic will, but we are going to make a will with these types of provisions so that we can ensure that if the husband passes away or if the wife passes away, that they're going to use Islamic law at that time. So a prenup and a will can refer to each other.
What's the easiest way for someone to create a will? Is it seeing an attorney, or are there other resources available, maybe online or something?
So there are resources online. Okay, so there's like My Wasiya. There's other free ones. Okay, again, you're going to get what you pay for, right? In the sense that if you are really the type who doesn't want to pay for a service, fine, go ahead, go online, print something, sign it. Fine, that's better than nothing, right? But you have to make sure that it's signed by 2 witnesses who are not going to inherit from you. Just printing a will and signing it is not enough. You have to print it and you have to sign it in the presence of 2 witnesses, and a notary is going to make it even stronger, right? So there's certain technical aspects of making sure that your will is strong. Okay, so I personally would say it's better than nothing. But yes, ideally, talk to a lawyer, okay? And that lawyer can give you specific situations. We've worked our entire lives. We've moved from thousands of miles to come and accumulate these things, right? And if we don't plan properly, it all goes away. Subhanallah.
Is estate planning part of your practice as well?
Yeah, so I do. It's bad. I joke with my friends. My practice area is death and divorce. And I think I joked about this with you too.
You did.
But yeah, so primarily it is 80% divorce and 20% estate planning.
So there is some happiness in there as well.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes. Well, the thing is that some of that is people fighting about inheritance after passing.
All right, we talked about a lot of things here, but we don't want to be the only ones talking here. So now we're going to open up for some questions that you may have. I know you had a question, so we'll start with you.
Welcome, Sam.
You say that a person, a work society, in a basic society, a person will stay about 3 times, especially, if you don't give a 3 times, after you say start a divorce.
That's totally wrong. Yeah. Subhanallah, subhanallah.
And the second thing is that, suppose somebody is using, now we have media, Hussain send an email, or say in a Facebook, or WhatsApp, they divorce my wife or something. Is that considered a divorce? Seriously.
I'm sorry,
is a text message or a Facebook message, if a husband pronounces divorce through a text message, does that count?
Or email.
Or email.
Yeah, most of the scholars are in agreement that if he texts with that intention, or even if he didn't intend it, because this is something that is very serious, that is taken very serious in Islam. This is something that is not to be joked around with. Oh, I divorced so and so. from Sharia perspective, one divorce has occurred, would occur.
And the first question was, we have this misconception that 3 divorces are the 3 T's, whether that's once or 3 times, at one time or over a span of time, is what's necessary for an Islamic divorce. That is not true. Just one time is enough. If the husband pronounces a divorce, the 3-month period expires without any reconciliation, without any intimacy, you are now divorced. That's it. You don't have to give any more if you don't want to. That's it. To see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the marriage to work, or to try the marriage to work. So it's a period where the two of you still live together. You're still amongst each other. For maybe the two of these people will realize, what are we doing? And maybe they'll get back together.
So you're saying that a person divorces his wife and living together. I mean, that's what I'm understanding. And then they're living together for 3 months. You're saying they still have the time to get together, even with divorce?
The divorce is not. Sorry, Sheikh.
No, go ahead. No, I mean, you see a lot of this. I want the audience to hear from
Sure.
you.
The divorce is not effective until those 3 months expire. You have started the process of divorce by uttering, and then it legally ends upon your maintenance of your wife ends upon that period, and you have the right to be intimate in that 3-month period. If you become intimate, then it's like one is gone, but you're still married.
You've reconciled, basically.
You've reconciled, yes. And it's not like a sinful, that's actually encouraged.
Thank you. Do we have any other one? If you want to use the microphone.
Yeah, let's use the microphone.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be your biggest witness. Because there are many people they do these type of things. They say, oh, I divorce you, but then say, oh, I didn't say it. Well, and I see a lot of these cases too, but I tell you, they're normal 100% of the time, but they only become crazy or mentally ill when they're arguing with their wife, and especially at the time when they when they pronounce this divorce, and then they come back and they tell, oh, I was very angry, or my mental condition was not. Of course, no one is going to divorce their wife when they're in a state of happiness. You're not going to go home tonight and say, I love you so much, I'm going to divorce you. No one says that. So this happens when a person is angry. That is why Allah subhanahu, this is a very serious issue. It needs to be taken seriously, especially for the brothers. They do this type of thing, and then they come back and they want the scholar to, give them some sort of fatwa or put a bandage over the damage that they had done. I'll give that to you.
One incident happened. Husband and wife. So wife got sick, and he took her to the hospital, and we find out she has a kidney problem, something like a serious problem. So that guy, he divorced her from the hospital, and he left. So that divorce is considered a divorce?
If he divorced her, yeah. But he's gonna be held accountable for it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, he divorced her in a situation, probably one of the worst times someone can be divorced. So whether it counts or not from a Sharia perspective, I mean, a divorce can be given. I don't know why he would do that when she's in the hospital getting. He wanted to set himself free from it. Yeah. So he'll have to answer for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a legal problem, right? Islamically, legally, it's a divorce, but secondarily, in terms of like we've all acknowledged that everybody will be accountable for what they do. That's why there's divorce and there's unjust divorce, right? SubhanAllah.
Can we come back to it? Can we use the microphone to ask the questions, please? I'll bring it to you and then we can pass it back.
I'll request some clarification of what to do with this situation. Like there is a legal aspect And again, legal aspect is split into Sharia legal and Western or local legal. And then we have practices like desi practices or other practices or family practices or
Yes.
whatever. Many times, many things balance each other. For example, uh, husband is responsible for all the expenses of wife within his limits or within reasons and all that. And wife doesn't have to pay her expenses, even if she works 40 hours a week or even more than that. In a situation like that, if she keeps her money and is not giving enough time to husband and children or the extended family, as the situation may be, if husband has some other arrangements, fine. If like like any other situation when both parties are agreeing, it doesn't matter. But if situation requires wife to take care of other family members or the children or the husband, and she doesn't have time for that. She is working or some other similar activity and keeping her money there and not even spending money to hire help. How to balance that? Like I had a situation where I was discussing with a lady scholar, and she said, no, wife doesn't have all these responsibilities. And I had a very simple question. I said, okay, then why Fatima requested a slave from Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and showed her hands, and he still didn't give her a slave, suggested something else. And she went back. Why her hands were like that if she is not responsible? If Ali was supposed to do everything about house chores and even grinding wheat or everything, and she just chuckled. But I didn't get my answer. So in this situation where prenup or whatever agreements we are going through, and we are taking care of legal aspects alone, how to how to get to this kind of situation, which currently is enforced on both husband and wife, many other things along with by the extended family and the society and log kya kahenge ya whatever other unofficial pressures make people do balance things.
Subhanallah. I think marriage is not only a legal institution. It's like I said, it's practical, and it has a lot of flexibility. A lot of the rulings when it comes to marriage actually deal with culture, right? What's going on in that society? What is reasonable in that society? For example, if you have a nikah and a mahar is not delineated, what happens? You look to see what is the society doing. So many of the roles and responsibilities, yes, you have the basics, but on top of that, there could also be an expectation. It can actually become part of what is the responsibility of a marriage, the cultural norms as well. We cannot necessarily divorce the cultural norms from what the expectations of marriage are. So, for example, the cultural expectation of what a marriage looks like in India and Pakistan might be very different than what the cultural expectations of what it looks like here. Okay? So it might be normal to have a certain arrangement in this country and something else in this country, and you may not be able to argue that one is Islamic and one is un-Islamic. So that's the first thing, is that culture has to, the practical aspect has to be looked at alongside the law of marriage, number one. Number two, when it comes to that situation, I see that more of a communication issue than anything else, right? If there's an understanding between husband and wife that this is my role, I'm working X, Y, and Z, I would like you to stay home, for example, or I would like you to, contribute, or whatever the case might be, I think that's a communication problem. And if that issue cannot be resolved, then we do have ways to address that, right? That's what we've been talking about, is that, again, divorce is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's bad, sure. It has impact if you do it in a bad way. But if there's incompatibility, then there's incompatibility. If one of the parent sides of that couple is not giving the rights of the other spouse, then there are ways to address that. That's my 2 cents.
No, I agree with you, and I was gonna say the same thing, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided the roles and responsibilities of everyone. It is not the responsibility of the wife to be providing food, shelter, and going to work and that type of thing. It is not her responsibility. But if she wants to do it, if she loves her husband, she will do it without the husband even asking her to do it. But she's not mandated to do it from a Sharia perspective. It's not, she can be working, she can have millions of dollars in her account, but from a Sharia perspective, she does not, it is not mandatory on her to provide food and shelter. That's the husband's responsibility. The wisdom behind that, we can get into that at a different time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designated specific roles and responsibilities for the husband, specific roles and responsibilities for the wife. And that's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, if the wife provides, that's sadaqah for her. If the husband provides, that's fard on him. Right? So I think that's a issue between those two individuals as to what they believe their roles and responsibilities are.
I feel you guys are repeating what I want to be answered. My understanding is, I may be wrong, the whole session was about contracts. Those should minimize ambiguities later on. And we are coming back to what are the...
Okay, that's a good question. The prenup and the postnup are not meant to dictate what happens during the marriage. Okay? The purpose of not is to say that, look, we're going to split the bills 50-50, we're going to use this account. No, the whole purpose of a prenup or a postnup is to decide what happens after. If you have to dictate in your marriage, you're going to wash the dishes, you're going to do this, I'm going to mow the lawn, don't get married. Right? The prenup is not used for the day-to-day, it's used if you get divorced. I hope that clarifies, inshallah.
So, Sheikh, I have a question. Have you come across a situation where 3 months have passed, husband has given divorce, and they have not made a contact, and now the divorce is official, and now 6 months down the line they realize, oh, I should get back together. Now it's khula, it's a different. What happens in this kind of situation?
That's the beauty of Islam, subhanAllah. Islam allows you to get back together. That's why you don't ever give 3 at one time. If you give 3 at one time, you're done. You can never have the possibility for this situation to arise where 6 months later you realize, subhanAllah, what did I just do? Or you know what? We were meant for each other. Get a nikah and you're married again. Then at that point, if you get divorced after that, the 3-month reconciliation happens, okay? And let's say you reconcile again. At the 3rd time, now it's like, okay, hold on. You guys are not meant for each other. You can't get married, right? So it's actually built into the system that way, subhanAllah.
The only thing I would add to that is if they want to get back together after 3 months, then the nikah needs to be performed again. If they do it before, then the nikah does not need to be performed. Any action that a husband and wife would do, even looking at each other or being with each other, would be considered, they're back together.
Within the 3 months.
Yeah, within the 3 months. So that's the difference. After 3 months, a new nikah is needed.
This is kind of a coaching probably question. The first one is the pre-marriage phase when it comes to agreeing on things. How you manage the cultural pressure from accepting the notion of a prenup, because culturally speaking, that shouldn't be there. When you talk about prenup, then you question the intention, right? The second question is after the fact, after divorce. Coaching the question again, how you manage the children's situation, because in our culture, unfortunately, it becomes a fight, and the children are between. How we come to understanding to maintain, quote, probably friendly relationship for the sake of children.
So when it comes to the first question, that had to do with, can you remind me the first question again?
how you manage the cultural pressure.
Cultural pressure, yes, yes. I think our goal is not necessarily to change this generation. My goal is to change the next generation. We're in a very interesting point in the Muslim community here in America. In the UK and other places, South Africa, for example, you've had Muslims there for generations and they've figured out these problems. And the Muslim culture and the societies have adjusted. We are still in that transition phase, I believe, here in America. And I think that this next generation coming up, I believe that, inshallah, prenups will become part of their culture. So I think as I was kind of saying in the beginning, I think the only way to kind of attack it at this level, at this generation who's in front of us, is only through education. I don't think there's any other way to really address it. And then you would hope that the second generation kind of sheds that cultural implications of the previous and it becomes more normal. So I don't think you can change a people. I think you change their kids. And that was the first question. The second question, when it comes to how do you maintain the relationship after divorce for the sake of the children, I think what happens a lot of times is because we're so scared of divorce, we wait very, very, very long to get divorced, where all the animosity comes out. And now we're using the children as the pawns. I think we have to become a more mature community where we realize a little earlier on that, you know what, this is not going to work, that we are actually doing something bad for the children. We're abusing each other in front of the children. We're yelling at each other in front of the children. Okay, at that point, either you should go to marriage counseling, or maybe you have to think otherwise and make sure that we don't get to that point where that animosity happens. I know this is idealistic answer, but I think if we're able to address the stigma of divorce, I think that actually helps us in maintaining relationships post-divorce for the sake of our children.
One of the things that I was going to bring it up actually, but I forgot. We talked a lot about divorce and property and finance and all those things, and it seems like we're going from marriage to divorce. Is there a stop in between marriage to divorce? Is there an alternative, basically, in the form of either mediation and arbitration? And is there a difference between the two?
Yes, subhanAllah, subhanAllah. Again, Islam is so beautiful, right? Not only do you have these reconciliation periods built in, but you also have the mandate of mediation. It's actually required. The husband and the wife, before they divorce, they should each appoint a representative, and those representatives should talk to each other. So mediation, that's exactly what mediation is. Not only is it to reconcile, but also to discuss the terms of how we are going to separate. So we as a community...
Is it just separate or reconcile?
Either way. Well, sorry, Islamically, I'm saying mediation could be there to help you get back together or to divorce. So instead of having to go to the divorce system to figure out how everything is going to be divided, you could use a neutral party. You can use your family members to try to resolve the issues of finances and children before you go to the court. So mediation is neutral parties, and they're helping you resolve things. They're not making a decision, they're just helping you come up with a resolution. Arbitration, on the other hand, is appointing somebody to make a binding decision. So theoretically, you could use Sheikh Umar to arbitrate your divorce. You give him the power, and whatever he decides, that's what would control. So you're basically trying to resolve your issues outside of the court system. Again, that's absolutely very, very important. When you look at countries after colonialism, they took away all the Islamic laws. Every single Islam, all the contract laws, everything they took away, but they left family law. At least a semblance of it somewhat. It's very westernized, but still, there was still a semblance of Islamic family law that applied. And that mediation and that arbitration is something that we can do here in America. If we established our own arbitration panels and our own mediation panels, we can resolve our divorce cases within our community and keep it out of the of the court system.
So what you're saying is arbitration can be legally binding?
It can be legal binding for property related issues.
For property related issues.
Yes.
And if someone who's interested in doing an arbitration, would you say, or would you recommend that if they go to a scholar or a attorney or someone that they trust, or should it be a panel? Should it be one person that is doing it, or should it be, three people that are doing it?
I would suggest three people. When it comes to arbitration, I would suggest three people, okay? Because they each will bring a very different perspective. So you could have a scholar, you could have a lawyer, and if it's highly child related, maybe you have a psychologist, I don't know. So having three people, I think, is going to be better when it comes to arbitration, so that you have a very wide perspective of how to solve the problem.
Okay, we're gonna take just two more questions. We'll take yours. I see one hand in the back. I'm not sure if we have any sisters up there or not. If we do, if they have a question, we can send a microphone up there as well. Yeah, he has a question. We'll take his question, and then there's one in the back.
State planning, does it consider the law of the land? Does it honor distribution to overseas?
Yes, you can distribute overseas. So you have the freedom of contract, right? That's why we can make a prenup. That's why we can make a postnup. That's why we can write a will, because we are allowed to dictate how we want our assets to be distributed. So absolutely, that's what the state would enforce, whatever we write. Yeah, and whether that goes, and it could go overseas as well. That's not a problem.
Okay, so you can answer part of my question through the previous question, which is going to go back to the prenup. You mentioned earlier that to prenup to be technically or legally valid, it's got to be the two prospective husband and wife, and then going to be their attorneys, so that everything's going to go according to law. But in our society, sometimes the prospective wife is here, the prospective husband is overseas, and vice versa. So how does that work in terms of prenup? Because sometimes for some of them to bring the other spouse, they have to go through marriage and then the legal documentation. So
Yeah.
by the time the other one comes here,
It's a long time.
they are already married. So is there a way, and maybe related to the other question, is to start a prenup here, somebody signs over there? You have seen something like that, that the court or wherever the judicial system here approves if the two parties are not in the United States?
Yeah, so in that situation, what you would do is you would look at where are you going to reside after you're married. Basically, you're looking, where am I more likely to get divorced? So for example, if you are in Chicago, your wife is from Malaysia, what would happen in that situation is you would hire a Chicago lawyer. The husband would hire a Chicago lawyer, and the wife would hire a Chicago lawyer, okay? And they can communicate however they need to communicate, email, phone, whatever. And basically, you're making it according to Illinois law, because that's more likely where you're going to reside, and where, if you were to divorce, where you would likely divorce. So it is possible that you have an out-of-country individual sign an American prenup. So that is possible, that is enforceable. And usually what would happen is that there's two ways you can do it. You could do it where before you sponsor that person, before you do the immigration paperwork, you can do the whole prenup. And then once the marriage is done, it's alive, right? So that's a very common arrangement where you have people from out of the country. Oh yeah.
Just adding on to that one, and we'll end with this, is a question that often comes up. Some people they did not get married here, they got married overseas. Now they're living here now, let's say they've been here for 10, 15 years. And let's say, unfortunately, they come to a point where it's no longer working. And one of them says, we don't need to do anything legally here because we never got married legally here. So our marriage is not even recognized, or it's not registered, or that type of thing.
SubhanAllah, that's a good question. So if you were married properly in some other country, you are legally married here. Okay? Most likely, if you got married...
Would they have to do anything here or no?
They don't have to. They don't have to.
Automatically, they would.
Automatically. I mean, the other thing is you're probably doing joint returns. You're on each other's bank accounts. You probably sponsored them in your immigration paperwork. So federally, you're married. You come here, you're going to be married. So if if the husband or wife files for divorce here, American law is going to apply even if you got married in India or Pakistan, right? The law of where you're getting divorced, that's what counts. So yeah, whether you register here or not, it's still a valid marriage.
is there a process for someone if they want to register marriage? Is there an idea or a concept of registering your marriage?
That's how you get married under state law, right? The way you get married, and I'm sure you've seen this, is you go to the county, you get a license. Okay, you have to get a license to get married, subhanAllah. The state's controlling whether you're allowed to get married. You get a license to marry, just like you get a license to drive, right? You get a license to marry, your imam performs the nikah, they sign the certificate, and they send it back. Those are the 3 steps: license, solemnization, and registration. Then you are married under Illinois law. If you did that same process or something like that, or you went through a waqf board in Pakistan or whatever, and you're married, whatever their requirements are, it's going to count the same way as if you went through this process here in Illinois.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our talk this evening. We hope that you found it beneficial. Lastly, if you can, if someone here would like to, talk to you more about this, how can they get in touch with you? And do you have any resources available that can benefit our community, inshallah?
Yeah, sure. So, alhamdulillah, 2-3 ways you can find. One is Nikah Masterclass. So, if you want more information about this topic, you can visit nikahmasterclass.com. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and so I do a lot of content on these types of questions and answers when it comes to marriage and divorce from the legal and Islamic perspective. And also on YouTube, I do have a series, many videos on divorce and estate planning and kind of this topic. So that would be the best way to get in contact. And then
is it under your name or what's
Naveen Hussain is the YouTube, and then Instagram is N Hussain, and then my law firm is called Faruqi and Hussain. So if you Google Muslim divorce lawyer, you're probably going to find my contact. But I also have a few cards on me as well, inshallah. I don't provide them, but they are available online. There's many prenup templates and will templates online.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I believe we have some snacks outside in the lobby, so please help yourself. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes. It has been it for my sister to give the property whatever she has. Okay. But the daughters, they come up and say we don't need anything. Okay. She has to give it to the sons. Okay. So in this case, she believes enough or she has to put it in some paper. As if
under Islamic law?
Yeah.
Under Islamic law, if once the right has accumulated, meaning they know exactly.